Thanks, everyone. I'm sorry I didn't schedule it in the break. I remember wanting one at like 2 and not thinking it was too soon. Still in Ways and Means, still working on 955, April 7th. Let's go back in, Beth.
James off of the legislative council. So we're still in the 6th instance of amendment, which is adding a whole bunch of new sections to H 955. We have a new reader assistance heading. This is an amendment to section 828, which you all amended last year, which is the section that controls what types of educational programs the school district is able to pay tuition to. This language would take effect with the foundation formula, so 2030 with contingencies. Keeping all current law the same and adding a new subsection to the very end of the statute. A school eligible to receive tuition pursuant to the section shall be prohibited from requiring fees of any kind from a student attending the school according to the provisions of this chapter above the amount of tuition paid by a sending school district pursuant to section 823 of this chapter, which when the foundation formula takes effect, that amount will be the base plus weights for each student. So what subdivision E1 says is a receiving school is not, if you are eligible to receive tuition under this section, then you cannot charge a publicly funded student any more than what you're getting from the school district as part of the foundation formula.
Representative Holcomb.
But does fees include tuition? Because many of them are currently charging tuition. They're not fees, but they charge fees, but they also charge tuition.
So I think I can amend this language however necessary to fully realize your goals here. I'm not sure that, I think you could argue in either direction. What you haven't defined fees, so it's ambiguous.
So we could define fees to include tuition, or we could say tuition and fees. Is that sort of, would that be 2 paths, Beth?
Sure.
Representative Holcomb, do you have a preference?
That works.
My, I don't, tuition or fees or any payment, either one of those would work for me. I also have questions about the date effective date, particularly given the excess minimum penalty.
So I'm hearing requiring tuition or fees or payment of any kind.
I mean, payment of any kind could loop in something that we're not thinking of, but I'm not sure.
I'm fine with tuition and fees.
Okay, great. Well, I have lots of hands. I just want to make sure Beth finishes her sentence. Are you done with, do you feel that you have the information?
Yes. For the moment.
Fantastic. Representative Odie?
Well, you said, things that we put for any other payment, and I was starting to think about federal government and what the rulemaking might be around for someone to donate to a nonprofit and then the nonprofit can grant something. So do we want to think about that now or not?
I would think not, and we can, when we have the opportunity to think about that in the future, when it's in the future, we can.
Or not?
Representative Maslin?
I was agree with tuition and fees.
Okay, great. Representative Holcomb, did you have a second thing in the next section? Oh, that you said?
Not in the next.
Oh, okay, so that's,
This would also apply to the next section. I just have concerns about waiting until 2030. Because this affects the current excess spending penalty.
so my thinking on this was that this is one of the ways we're making sure the foundation formula will work in the current state. If we're in the future state, sorry, if we're talking about the current state, that strikes me as a different policy conversation that we can have. And I don't know if that makes more sense to have in the context of S220, which we're going to look at on Thursday or now. Let's save it for when we talk about the excess spending penalty.
When can we be talking about that?
I don't remember, it's somewhere inside my computer.
May want to see if I'm available
Cool.
to do that conversations.
Great,
And if I'm not, I'm sorry, John.
okay, we'll figure that out, great.
Second subdivision in the new subsection, a public school located in Vermont that receives tuition pursuant to section 823 of this chapter shall be prohibited from charging any student attending the school a fee of any kind above the amount of tuition paid by a sending school district pursuant to section 823 of this chapter, regardless of whether the student is a resident student or a student attending the school on tuition. I believe the intent behind this language is to treat all students at the school the same, regardless of whether they are tuitioned or resident students.
I want to just take one step back and say, strategically, if we take care of it here, it's part of a, big bill, and this bill's gonna cost. If we put it in the excess, if we put it in the bill about the S-220, then maybe nothing will happen with that bill, or something will be removed, so we won't solve the problem today. It needs to be solved, and I would feel probably more comfortable solving this problem, solving it today.
I mean, another way of looking at it is the governor's probably gonna veto this bill and probably won't veto S-220.
All right, there's.
I don't know if we're gonna pass
I rest
S-220,
your
but like
case.
there's the
I
reverse
rest your
of what you
case.
said. Okay.
I'm
Okay. Representative Mazzarin.
Yeah, thank you. Little question.
It's fine.
Sometimes you drop the voice just a little bit at the end.
Oh,
of the
sorry.
sentence, and you said you'd be more comfortable solving, and then I lost the.
Solving a current problem in something that's a big bill. I got, was on its way to passage, but our chair made a
Yes, I
wonderful
understand.
point, and I am going to totally agree with her on this.
Great.
Very good.
I hadn't thought of that.
Not usually things I discuss on the record, but that's the kind of week we're gonna have all week. Representative Brannigan.
Talking about fees.
Indeed, fees, yes.
Not talking about hot lunch costs anymore, because we didn't bring hot lunch and.
Well, so for instance, I have a friend whose kid goes to a school on public dollars, but it's an independent school, and they do charge extra for lunch. And she is really struggling financially to cover the costs of that lunch, just by way of example, because not every school in the state has not every independent school has opted in universal meals. Or if you're on a border and your kids are going to school in another state, like New Hampshire, they might not have lunch.
So this would prevent them from being charged that fee.
Indeed,
So would the school then have to give them children lunch?
I imagine so. Maybe
Good,
not.
they should be now. And so what about bus rides to the basketball game?
Samesies.
Same thing. And I thought of something else too. But I forgot what it was. Okay, but that's good. So we're talking every fee, every cost.
It's not, it just says what it's going to say, tuition or fees with no modifier.
Good.
And we mean everything. Although I haven't seen that in statute yet.
That's going to be intense section.
Okay, we're gonna keep going.
$5 to go to the field trip,
$2 for lunch. I was thinking about books, those are supplies.
New reader assistance
A
heading.
lot of people put that in their.
Folks, that means we're gonna take a brief moment and we're gonna go to a new section.
Union School District Study Committee Budgets. This is the section 707 of Title 16. It is the language about study committee budgets for studying formation of a union school district. Current law requires any proposed budget exceeding $50,000 to go to the voters. And last week you all talked about how the cost of elections alone may exceed that $50,000. So we're bumping that up to $500,000. So a proposed budget under $500,000 would not need to be approved by the voters. If it is a proposed budget of over $500,000, it would need to go to the voters. And the only amendments in this section are changing 50,000 to 500,000.
This is.
But that would still be within, a district still wouldn't be able to spend more than was in their currently warned budget to voters, right? So
I know you're, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
if you feel like I have sufficiently explained that you know what I'm talking about, I'll stop talking.
No, I don't think the law is that specific.
So even if the lot, like, would that mean that a district could go into deficit?
Trying to deserve.
Or
I'm scrolling the entire section. Well, I mean, I guess how that works is gonna be fact dependent, right? They could shift costs from somewhere to something else, and so technically could be going into debt for the other thing that they shifted costs for, and not study committee budget. I mean, so yes, could pay, and remember the budget is for the study committee, so a study committee by definition needs at least 2 school districts coming to it. So if it's $500,000 in 2 school districts, then each school district is not paying $500,000. They're paying a prorated share based on their ADM. I don't see anything in here that limits them on setting a study committee budget within their available means, if you will.
within their available, so, but aren't they just default limited to spending within their existing means? Or is us adding this language allowing them to go beyond their existing?
I don't think this language changes anything about current law other than when they have to seek approval of the voters. The warning doesn't say anything about, and this money is in this reserve account and we're going to use it for this. It just says shall the school district appropriate funds necessary. So appropriating funds necessary to me means you have the funds to appropriate.
Like within your existing budget, you don't appropriate funds from voters, you appropriate funds from your budget, right?
Correct.
Okay,
But there's nothing in here that says you can't change the allocation. Like if you have a pot of money,
yes,
right?
you could change how you allocate it within your existing budget, but you couldn't spend more than your existing budget.
Right. I guess what
Okay.
I'm trying to get at is by changing the allocation, that could lead you to debt in something else. In the universe of possibilities.
And are districts allowed to run a non-balanced budget?
There are provisions. John, if you know the answer, or Julia, if you know the answer, you're welcome to shout it out, but there are provisions in here for borrowing money and payment of a deficit. Thanks.
I think my,
Okay.
but my underlying question though, to just get totally clear, is this is not giving permission to raise new taxes. This is just giving permission to spend the money that you have as a district.
I don't know that I can answer affirmatively.
Okay,
Because,
will you get back to us on it to answer affirmative?
no, I mean, I am
I don't know if you'll ever be able to answer.
correct, because I believe school districts can have a deficit
But that,
that is going to have to be made up the next year
yes,
through taxes.
yes.
So if you
But
have,
then the voters would have to vote on those taxes that next year.
correct. And all this is doing is saying, I mean, you could warn it, there's nothing in current law that would prohibit them from warning a budget of $500,000 right now.
And I guess what I'm asking, like, under current law, a district could spend more than their budgeted amount and run a deficit and have to deal with that with the voters the next year too. Okay. So we're not giving a new permission on ways to relate to the voter in terms of spending.
I don't think so.
Okay,
Other than
yes.
if you are signaling in some way with this amount of money, that they should be spending this amount of money. And therefore,
Okay. And I don't. Well, the word signal is challenging. Yes, Representative Woody.
Let's just say that the work, the study committee is wanting to happen, they want to do this work. And then in the end, the education committee has decided that the city or the municipality, school district gets to vote on whether they want to go forward with what might be a consolidation or a merger. If we say that this has to go on the ballot, then all they have to do is say, no, you can't spend the money this way, and then nothing can be studied. And they haven't even studied it yet. I don't understand why this is going on a ballot, for a vote.
So this is existing law that we're amending.
I think it was in place to make sure the school districts weren't spending more and creating more of a impact on their later fiscal years, so it wouldn't be raising taxes in future years. So it's to really constrain spending, saying, you can spend this without coming back to the voters. But if you're spending more than that, ask us for it.
It becomes a referendum on the last question before you have the earlier questions answered.
Yep.
Wow,
Right.
that doesn't seem right.
Mark, sorry.
So we ended up on $500,000 because,
It was just a number that was more. You want a different number?
Yeah, about 50.
we'll just be concerned.
Why not just keep it 50?
50 seems extraordinarily low to me, given how much it actually costs to warn it, I remember, so the context was a few years ago, because of things we did in 127, we asked districts to basically redo their budgets. And so we set up grants to pay for the rewarned elections. And that was around 50 per election. And it just seems wild that we would ask for a vote that might cost more than the amount that was being voted on. 500,000 was really a fairly random number though. So if someone has a better number idea.
Yeah, I just think that the general public, if they saw it, would be pretty upset that, they could go up to $500,000 without their approval.
So how much would the general public be comfortable
I don't know what the,
with?
I mean, what does that look like for districts? I guess we've heard from a couple as far as them combining. And what did they come up, Colchester, and did they have a final amount as to what it cost them?
And this is just the study
It's just,
committee, yeah.
I see.
And so this isn't 500,000 per district. This is 500,000 for all the districts in the conversation together.
Right.
And so if it was 50,000, that could be 10,000 per district. So that's like spare change, right? It would mean a lot to me. I don't think it is a lot in the grand scheme of a district budget. So if folks want to come back with a different number, please do.
Okay, no, and again, it doesn't limit them from doing it, it just they have to go to a vote.
Yeah.
But if vote, can we just trace out, if the vote is no, then either they have to spend less on the study, or there's just no study.
Right. Well, right, I mean, it's,
Oh, are you trying to get there?
no, I just, again, I just think as a taxpayer, if I saw that, I'd just be a little alarmed, I guess.
And then that would be something that you would take up. So here's the question. So it's not us that is giving this money out. It's saying districts can spend this. And so if you were alarmed, you would take up your alarm with your district And then your district would be responsive to your alarm. And I imagine some districts,
They'd be responsive only if it was over $500,000.
well, I would assume that they would be responsive about any input you have on how they spend their money.
Okay.
And I imagine, frankly, I imagine a district that's more fiscally conservative, they might not go up this high because they would know how their voters would feel about it. I don't know that.
So it's like a line item veto that we're opening up here.
That's what it feels like.
I don't think that I am having big trouble with this.
With what?
The idea of opening up the idea of a line item veto for people.
So it's
on
already,
school budgets.
okay, so it's already there in current law.
Well, maybe we should repeal.
So we have some people that don't want any limit. We have some people who want a lower limit.
It's already there in law at 50,000.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so if Carol, Mark, discuss offline, come back to us with some number in between the two. Representative Burkhardt.
I'm just trying to understand the language. So what happens if it goes to a vote? Say there are 3 towns that are coming together to do a study committee and it's over 500,000 or it's over 50,000, for example. It goes on the ballot in all 3 places and 2 of the towns say yes and 1 town says, I'm not spending the money. Does that merger committee then just start to exclude that town for the discussion, or does it go forward? And I'm just confused about what would happen in that instance. So my only frame of reference is the black and white letter of the law. And so I can't speak to what has happened in the field. I would say on page 14, line 6, if the vote of subdivision 1 of the subsection is in the affirmative in 2 or more districts, then the boards of the affirming school district shall appoint a study committee consisting of the number of blah, blah, blah. So to me, I read that as the towns that voted to approve the budget form the study committee. It doesn't explicitly say if you didn't approve the budget, you are prohibited from participating. There's also a concept of informal participation. You can be designated as an advisable school district to the formation of the union school district. So I think there are possibilities for how that would play out that aren't explicitly spelled out in law. I would say what is contemplated here is that if you voted yes, you're part of the study.
How I was part of a merger, 2 districts voted to form the study committee and 2 additional ones came on later. But they did not participate in the initial work. They were sitting at the table, but they were not officially part of it. And they only became officially part of it and they decided to join and take it to their voters. Did all 4 of those districts end up paying the costs of the consultants and all the other stuff that went into the study committee? We actually did it ourselves. We didn't use consultants.
And a decent amount of the consulting will be paid for by the state in this case.
We don't have any reference for the actual cost that was incurred through many of these, do we? Do you have any historical on it?
Oh, no, I don't. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Julia, have you seen any? Okay, we'll come back to this number and or existence of the section.
New reader assistance heading.
Carol and Mark are coming up with a compromise,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
The Elkhart team.
I like it.
That's 2 out of 3.
I was with a bunch of teenagers this weekend and they were like talking about the best strategy for rock, paper, scissors as if a strategy is like how you win rock, paper, scissors. And it was, anyway, seems relevant to this moment.
Okay, now we're in a rulemaking area of the bill. There's 3 separate rulemaking directives here. I've spelled them out in their own sections so that they're easier to change. But they could all be combined into one section if you feel strongly about that. First is related to small and sparse schools, and I already know it says small by necessity twice. It's taken care of. So the State Board of Education shall, unless extended by the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, adopt updates to AOE's, to the rules, to the education quality standard rules, to establish criteria for identifying schools as small by necessity or small by necessity, or both, not later than March 31st, 2027. Such rules shall be consistent with the work of the Small Sparse School Committee of the State Board of Education and the recommendations of the committee dated December 17th, 2025. So this contemplates that rulemaking would be final by March 31st, 2027, unless LCAR gives them an extension. Next, intra-district budgeting. The Agency of Education shall, unless extended by LCAR, adopt updates to the district quality standards contained in the district quality standards rules, which are an AOE rule series, not later than March 31st, 2027. I did not know what else to add here for legislative intent or directive here, but I would suggest, unless you want no control over what these rules look like, to add some legislative intent or further direction to the agency for rulemaking.
So it seemed like everyone really liked and I don't want to put words in everyone's mouth. So I think it would be helpful to do something towards the really great work that we heard from Burlington about, in terms of intra-district budgeting. I don't know if folks remember that presentation. And I'm wondering if anyone is willing to work with Beth to add a sentence or two towards that, to describe that better in legislative language. That's something you'd be interested in, Bridget? Sure. Thank you.
Ask a question about this.
Yep.
I'm assuming within the district, there are certain costs that adhere to the supervisory level that are administrative overhead costs for the unit as a whole. And so whatever policy here would also apply, would this policy end up specifying the portion of the total base that is going to adhere to the supervisory unit?
Maybe. I think that's a question about if we want to include it or not. Cool. Mark?
Sure. So Burlington situation you're talking about where they proposed a level funded budget, correct? And then didn't consider the December 1 letter until, I don't just remember all the
so
details
what
of that.
I think what I was thinking about in terms of, I mean, they explained their whole process to us, but specifically in terms of intra-district equity, it was the way they made sure that each individual school within the much larger district was receiving an appropriate share of the district's overall resources based on the needs of the students in those different schools. And they had a very explicit system for doing that. And that was a big ask when we passed 73, was sort of like as part of the foundation formula, especially for moving to larger districts, to meet some of the concerns of smaller towns within a larger district, that they're still going to get their needs met, even if they're not as loud as, say, another town in the district might be.
Next, section 27A, reserve fund account standards, district quality standards, rulemaking. So this is amending Act 183 from 2024, section 7, that required AOE to initiate rulemaking to update district quality standards to include recommended reserve fund account standards. Now you are giving them a new goalpost of December 31st, 2026, requiring them to work in partnership with the school business with BASBO, and requiring them to complete rulemaking by December 31st, 2026, to update district quality standards to include recommended reserve guidance. The agency shall specifically adopt rules to prescribe minimum and maximum balance levels for a reserve fund, taking into consideration revenue predictability and expenditure volatility, exposure to significant one-time expenses and impact on credit ratings. Specify acceptable conditions that warrant use of the reserve fund in the period within which funds may be used. Establish best practices for replenishing a depleted reserve fund, including the period over which the reserve fund should be replenished. Define appropriate accounting terms to facilitate data consistency and improve data quality across the state. And identify conditions that may justify deviation from any broadly applicable standards adopted pursuant to this section. The agency shall adopt these rules as an emergency rule and concurrently propose them as a permanent rule. The emergency rule shall be deemed to meet the standard for the adoption of emergency rules pursuant to the VSA, section 844 subsection A. And I will admit, John worked on this language. So if you love it, it's all John. Actually, it's all me.
Yeah, right.
Anything? Bueller?
Okay.
Small and sparse schools. I did do this, but this is really John's area of expertise. We're really sharing responsibilities in this bill with you. So this looks scary, but it's not. This is an amendment to the small and sparse schools grant that will not take effect until the foundation formula takes effect. But because this language hasn't taken effect yet, in order to amend it, I had to repeal it and then replace it all over again with the small changes that we are making here. So fun. And the only changes that have been made is what you passed in Act 73 are highlighted in yellow. So we're in the definition section of small and sparse schools grants. The Act 73 language had the state board making an annual determination consistent with recommendations they made. And now we're changing that to the AOE making an annual basis consistent with state board rule, which you have just asked the state board to develop in one of the sections we just walked through. Same for sparse. They've been determined by AOE on an annual basis to be sparse by necessity. Understand it's consistent with State Board of Education rule. And that is it. But we had to include all the language because we repealed it, so we don't want to leave anything out. Hi, Jim.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for the.
Are there opinions around the table around changing from state board to AOE? I can think of opinions here, there, and the other way, but
So my thought is that the Agency of Education is responsible for all of the other counts related to weighting. And the State Board of Education is not in any way resourced to do this kind of frankly administrative work. And so they're providing the policy guidance, which is the standards, but the actual administrative work of sort of filtering through and saying who's in and who's out happens the same, what should happen the same way that economic disadvantage and EL and all of those other student counts and grants happen. The AOE is, the state board is not responsible for any other grant provisions.
great. Thank you. Consistency.
And that's it for miscellaneous language.
Nothing there.
Okay, I'm gonna summarize next steps. And you're gonna tell me what I left out. Bridget's taking the lead on intra-district equity legislative intent. Pre-K is going back to a drawing board. Study committee costs is being figured out between Mark and Carol. Scrolling. John has a whole bunch of edits on school construction that I'm not going to summarize. We need to decide, Charlie is going to take the lead on figuring out more about the default state, the tax classifications,
Yes, I am.
and I think Those are the next steps I have. Does anyone want a homework assignment that they don't have yet? Yes,
I think I already said some suggestions around class size language.
yes.
In that we need to have consistent lift and shift language for what class sizes are.
Beth is working on turning some of that language into statutory language.
What about the language, we'll talk about the comprehensive high school.
Those two sentences.
Send a suggestion.
Great.
Yep.
Okay,
I've got 'em.
great.
May I?
Please.
This is, I can't betray any confidences, but I think Commerce has a suggestion for a term to use,
Oh, great.
and it is comprehensive high school. And if maybe you wanted to connect with Representative Marcotte to confirm that, so it's not just me saying that.
Yep.
Nice.
Making sure we're using the same terminology.
Correct. Yes.
Great. Okay. Anyone else? Staff team? Don't worry about it. Okay, great. Yes, Rebecca.
At some point, we're gonna go through all the timelines of when.
Yes.
Because some of the timelines still seem very problematic.
So tomorrow morning, we're gonna look at the whole thing all together as one big and endless list of instances of amendments. And then we'll be able to get a better sense of effective dates. And if the staff team has time between now and tomorrow morning, we'll have a draft timeline that we can then see and move things around in. Mark?
Are we not mentioning RADs because of the time frame?
Oh, we lost Brad somewhere.
There was no new RADs language. to look at
That's
right
fine.
now, But it's going to be in the amendment.
Jim, did you just,
The very last thing to take effect. Suffering will be in the far future.
and we are inviting the Agency of Education, the Department of Taxes and the V's in, meaning the, School Board Association, the Superintendent's Association, et cetera, in tomorrow afternoon.
As hopefully.
Yes.
Not sure where you are, Representative Higley, on the RADs. I'm not sure. I'm clear about
There
that.
has
Okay,
Representative Holcomb?
When Professor Colby was in here, Professor Colby did talk about the weights. We're only in year 2 of phasing in. We're going to, or whatever it is, maybe 3, we're going to continue to expand those weights, and we know that already having a disability. Are we really not going to address that?
There's a data request. We can't understand what the impacts of changing them are right now because we have no idea what the demographics are of students that are tuitioned. And so if we removed weights from tuition students, we would not be able, we don't know what the tax impacts of that would be right now. And so we have a data request to figure, once we get that data, then we can model what that change would be.
So the data, some of it was given to the task force, so the data does exist.
So one of the pieces of language that we have with that sort of update to the 127 data request is the data that we will need to, in order to fully understand that.
I mean, that we do know enough to know that it's problematic, and we're also currently applying penalties based on weighting that we know is erroneous.
I think we don't understand what the negative rate would be of doing something though, or what the tax impacts would be of doing something.
Not sure we know fully the tax impacts of not doing something.
Absolutely.
Can we given, I mean, I think that.
We don't understand the tax impacts in either direction.
Right, but
Why
we know that one way is definitely causing some harm, so it'd be nice to weigh that even with consideration.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you, everyone. If folks could take the time that we have now to check on the staff. If you have a homework assignment, your homework assignment is due tomorrow morning as lovely sentences that are either drafted or like deeply drafted ideally. Thank you.